So when we look at relationships, right, we know that, especially in the marriage, before we even get there, let's look at relationships, period. You have platonic relationships, friend-like relationships, and then you have romantic relationships, dating, courting, you end up going into marriage. But as we're speaking within the context of marriage, every relationship has needs, specifically in the marriage context. Husbands have needs, wives have needs, and they're not always the same or similar, simply because we're just wired differently. Sometimes they are the same, but in most cases, they're not the same simply because we're wired differently, right? Things get really crazy, or ornery, if you will, when those needs are not being met, right? In other words, and it always happens after the honeymoon phase. I don't know what it is about the honeymoon phase. I don't know if it's because we become complacent, or we've dated, you've pursued her, you know what I'm saying, guys? You finally got her, you are now in the relationship, and you now are locked into this marriage thing. And I don't know what happens after the honeymoon phase. We've been in each other's presence, we wake up with each other, we go to sleep with each other. I don't know what it is, but after the honeymoon phase, things get kind of complacent, and then you go into this routine, especially if you have kids. You get up, you know what I'm saying? Or if you're anything like us, you pray, you get up, you pray, you brush your teeth, wash your face, you take a shower, get dressed, drop the kids off, or in my case, every other week they stay here with me. But you go into this routine, and it's a routine that you do every day. Weekend rolls around, you go to church, you might spend a little bit of family time together, but there is nothing special that you do for one another, right? In terms of meeting those needs. And then what ends up happening is the lovely relationship that you had now transitions from relationship to roommate status, right? And it's not that you don't love each other, it's just that all the things that you do in terms of your routine, you've allowed to take precedence over who you are as husband and wife. And that's where we make the mistake. And then the needs go unmet, right? Which is the reason from time to time you've heard me talk about the order of operations. Now, granted, there are times where a certain situation is an urgent situation and it'll take precedence over I'm not going to be at work and be like, listen, my wife needs to talk, so I got to stop this phone call, or where I'm at home and I stop my phone call with a client because my wife needs to talk unless it's an emergency. So those things are understood. But in most cases, in my home, it's God first, it's my wife second, it's the kids third, and then everything else after that. So I think that it's very important that we get to the place, because what you don't want to happen. Now listen, let me just put this disclaimer on it, because I think this needs to be said. I am not an advocate of divorce or cheating in any way, shape, or form. But what I do realize is that people have a breaking point, right? And so I don't want anybody to condone, I don't want nobody to condone, or say, yo, Quest said I got the right to step. No, I'm not. Never do you have the right. You do everything that you need to do in order to stay faithful and stay in your marriage, because once that happens, along with although it may be your breaking point, it causes problems in the trust area, and it's hell to try to build that back up again. But back to my original point, what you don't want is, you want to make sure you're providing the needs. I'm not talking about wants now, I'm talking about needs. You want to make sure that you're providing the needs for your spouse. Why? Because you don't want your spouse to go somewhere else. Fellas, like for real, most wives need to have an emotional release, meaning that if there's no beef and you just stop talking to your wife, let's say for a day or two, she's going to think that something is wrong. Why? Because they're emotional creatures. They need to connect, especially with you. They need to talk with you, even if it's something that happened at the job. You know what I'm saying? And then you of yourself have to find out whether you want to, is this a situation where I'm trying to resolve, or I'm just trying to be a sounding board? And in most cases, she just needs you to be a sounding board. She just needs you to listen to her. And if there's anybody that she needs to listen to, or if anybody that she can go to have this quote unquote emotional release, it should be you, right? And so what you don't want her to do is be at work. after a series of time, or after an extended amount of time, I should say, where she's been trying to talk to you and you keep blowing her off. And you keep blowing her off or saying, not right now, honey, I'm busy. What you don't want her to do is to be at the job, you know what I'm saying, in the break room. And that one dude comes by because he knows she married. He sees the pictures of you and her on her desk at work, the pictures of the kids on the desk. And every now and then he'll ask her, how's the husband and kids? You know what I'm saying? And he'll keep asking that. And you may not say anything to him the second, third, fourth time. But the fifth or sixth time, when things ain't working out too well at the house, that's what you don't want, fellas. And then there's the flip side of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, ladies, for real, whatever your husband's need is, you don't want another woman to start paying attention to him in the ways that you would start paying attention to him, or should start paying attention to him, or should be paying attention to him. You don't want that. Because now what you're doing is you opening up room for the enemy to put foothold in your marriage. And as it relates to love and respect, y'all already know how that goes already. How you access a man's emotions is through his body, right? How you access a woman's body is through her emotions. So imagine, fellas, she needs to have an emotional release by having conversation with you. She goes to the job and another dude is providing that conversation for her. It turns from conversation to having coffee together, from having coffee together to having lunch together, from having lunch together. Now, I don't even want to go any further. You know where it goes from there. So I guess I'm saying all of these different things to say, make sure, ladies, that your husband is covered. Husbands, make sure that your wife is covered and meet those needs. And I promise you, if you start to do that, meeting those needs, because chances are, if you're looking for your needs to be met, you might be in the wrong place. But what I have noticed is that when you start meeting the needs of your spouse, finding out what their love language is and speaking it effectively, like, you can really start turning things around. So let's start there. All right? And I'm telling you, you'll see some magnificent things come out of it. You feel me?